Good day, I'm Dominick DiOrio, and I'd like to give you an additional welcome to this music hall here in our new facility, and I hope you've been enjoying the presentations today here. Let's see. Oh, fun. Okay. Today, I'd like to talk to you about something near and dear to my heart, because I am both a composer and an educator. And I believe we're facing an educational crisis. I'm not talking about the gap between the nation's growing need for scientists and engineers and the lack of people we're educating to meet that need. I'm not talking about the persistent achievement gap between racial minorities and their white counterparts. And I'm not even going to talk about the sorry state of standardized testing. No, I'm going to talk about this. You see, we're facing a crisis of apathy, a crisis of disinterestedness. Our students are bored. I mean, they don't want to learn in our classrooms. They don't see how learning can be engaging, interesting, or even fun. And who can blame them? Yes, this generation of students is failing to find learning meaningful. And we as educators sometimes fail to make the case that learning is meaningful. To be clear, I'm not pointing fingers at any one person or group of people in particular, right? I'm speaking about our society at every level, from parents and peers to politicians and corporations. As a society, we talk loudly about the importance of a quality education, but when it comes time to fund those initiatives, we sometimes don't back up what we say. The statistics, though, back this up. We're ranked right now, according to the 2009 PISA study, 14th in reading, 25th in math, 17th in science. This, Lone Star College, where we are now, is a two-year college. And it says here that at public two institutions, about 42% of students had ever taken a remedial course. That's astounding to me. That means that 42% of our students are not ready in math and reading and writing by the time they get to college. And even here in Texas, yes, we've had large cuts, billions of dollars of cuts this year in public education. As an educator, I can't help but ask myself, why? Why are our students becoming more apathetic? Why do they suddenly seem more disinterested in learning than previous generations? And why do they want to be somewhere, anywhere but the classroom? Do you sometimes feel like this? I know I do, yes? Here's what I think. It's not that our students don't want to learn. They learn every day. It's just not always happening in our classrooms. And with the speed of technological change, we as teachers often feel like we are the ones stuck at the bottom of the learning curve. Our students have grown up with the world in their pocket. Yes? They quite literally have access to libraries of information on their cell phones. Right? They can communicate with their friends across the hall in biology or their family across the world in Beijing. They can, they can listen to Lady Gaga while working out at the gym and share it with their friends on Facebook. They can even text on their iPhones while driving, making the roads a little less safe for all of us. Yes? We've called these students the millennial generation, but I would offer that we call them the distracted generation. See, we're losing the attention of our students because our traditional learning format cannot keep pace with the rapidly attention-shifting minds of our students. In other words, we're using the wrong shapes. And if we can learn to choose our shapes intentionally, then we'll be well on our way to fixing our educational crisis. Let me explain. When I talk about a shape, I'm talking about the formal organization of any given length, be it time or space. Yet it's so much more than that, yes? The best shapes manipulate an observer's experience. They grab the observer's attention, and they keep the observer captivated. In other words, the best shapes draw the composer into the artist's creative world. The best shapes are great art. They surpass information and approach inspiration. In other words, the construction of form is the shaping of an observer's experience. As a composer, I deal with shapes every day. My thoughts are consumed with them, and I'm constantly asking myself questions like, what makes a shape interesting? How can a given shape aid in comprehension over time? Is there an ideal size or length to shapes? Are there compelling ratios between sizes of different shapes? And what kind of shape is aesthetically pleasing? This is the work of any creative artist, be it author, sculptor, poet, or composer. Artists deal elementally with shapes as the building blocks of their creative process. And the best creative artists among us link these shapes together in compelling ways to illuminate our understanding of the world. How does a composer choose an effective musical shape? As an example, let's think about perhaps the most composerly of all composers, Beethoven, right? On the next slide, you will hear a familiar clip. Probably many of you know it from his Fifth Symphony. And the first few measures of the music will be shown on the top, as well as another graph, an audio graph that shows the sonic saturation of space. Take a listen. We sense that Beethoven's shape is one of progress. And when I speak of progress, I'm talking about a gradual lengthening of periods of intensity. You see in the graph up here, yes, the loud moments very clearly. Yes, and Beethoven is actively constructing his form to meet the needs of his musical content, right? Composers do this all the time. Let's look at another composer, perhaps one a little less dead, okay? That's me in Portland, Oregon a couple months ago. Beautiful place, you should go. I'd like to play one of my own compositions for you. This work is called O Virtus Sapientiae, and it's based on a chant by Hildegard von Bingen, a 12th century mystic, composer, poet, liturgical dramatist. In choosing my musical shape, I wanted to create a new capsule for Hildegard's ancient music. So I kept Hildegard's original chant and designed other parts around it for a chorus and 3 soprano voices. At the start, I quote Hildegard's chant verbatim, yet very soon you'll hear it worked upon and echoed by solo voices, yes? Because it gives it this sense of mystique or something, I hope. We'll see what you think. I won't have time to play the work in full, but you'll get a chance to hear about 1.5 minutes or so of it. And it's performed here in an excerpt by the Yale Schola Cantorum and their director, Simon Carrington, during a New Works reading day they did. The 3 soprano soloists are Catherine Aaron, Lucy Fitzgibbon, and Ariana Bella. My composition did not spring out of an inspired moment of divine revelation, yes? Much like Javier talked about earlier. And it's said that Hildegard did. Her chants were divine revelations brought to her from on high. No, my composition was the work of trial and error. I set the following parameters for my chant to use, for my work, to use Hildegard's original chant directly in a process I like to call active quotation. And you heard it sort of floating about by itself at first and then on top of the choir at other points. I wanted to set both the English translation and the Latin concurrently, yes? So we get this juxtaposition of ancient and modern. And I wanted to create that mystic echo effect with the three soprano soloists, evoking Hildegard's own private ululations and meditations. In this simple formula, the art and craft of composition comes from the choice of themes and their assembly into shapes. For a composer, this shaping takes place on many levels, right? What is the main theme of the composition, or themes? How much time do I, as the composer, have to present these themes? And what is the best shape in which to present these themes? These are artistic questions, right? They're questions that have no one right or wrong answer. As a composer, I can't tell another composer, use this shape, this is the best, right? It's an individual process thought of by individually minded artists, yes? This process is often known as pre-composition. Pre-composing is to composing as creating an architectural sketch is to starting construction, yes? It's making a plan before you begin, just like outlining a talk or paper before writing your first draft. Then, when you get to the act of composition, the musical shapes you create are intentional. And this is absolutely key. Yes, intentional structure is a result of well-worked out material. This holds true for music, for architecture, and for teaching. But one element of the puzzle we've been neglecting is time. Yes, composers build shapes in time. Start at one point, end at another. That's fixed. Yes, the musical process is governed by this constraint. Whatever our shape is, it has to fit into this time period. For music on the radio, that's maybe 3 minutes. For an evening concert, it can vary between like 45 minutes to a couple hours in length, based on the patience of your audience. Yes? And the longer the time, the more skilled the composer has to be to fill that time shape with a coherent and persuasive musical content. And this is critically important because educators also deal fundamentally with the constraint of time. And for educators, the time is much more vast. Yes? The distinction comes down to choice. Composers choose how long their piece will be. Educators are told, yes, maybe you have a class period of, 25 minutes, 50 minutes, 80 minutes. Maybe you meet every day. Maybe you meet 3 times a week. Maybe you meet once a week. Maybe you meet for a semester, for a year. Yes? Whatever the length, we must approach the development of our lessons and course plans the same way that a composer approaches the shaping of a musical form. In other words, we must approach teaching as the art form that it really is. We can ask the same questions as a composer, yes, with a little tweaking. What is the main theme of my lesson? How much time do I have to present this theme or themes? And what is the best shape in which to present them? To be clear, this is not a new idea. Teachers have always created lesson plans, and the best teachers have always approached the creation of a lesson plan with a creative and artful mind. But we need to expand our scope. This is not universal in teacher education. To that end, here are some tips for creating the most effective shapes in our classrooms. 1, know your theme. Yes? What is your content for that time? Make sure you know clearly what you're responsible for teaching. And then if the students should know that by the time the course is done, do everything in your power to make sure they do. Know your time. Yes? Work within that time constraint. Build a buffer. Right? Know that there will be unforeseen circumstances in your teaching. And it can be catastrophic, a wildfire, for instance, yes? Pre-compose. Plan your shapes in advance. There we go. Plan your shapes in advance. Plan daily shapes, plan weekly shapes, plan semesterly shapes. And this is critical because if you have the journey in mind before you begin, you're much more likely to arrive at your destination. Be intentional. Yes? Plan your lessons creatively and vary the shapes of your daily lesson plans. If you have to sit through Beethoven's Fifth Symphony every day for 45 days, Don't you think by the end you'll sort of be a little tired of Beethoven? Right? It's the same way in teaching, right? We need to be creative about the way we approach our lessons. And if we're focused and intentional in our delivery of content, then the students will have a greater chance at content mastery. Finally, self-assess. Figure out which shapes work best for your students. And newsflash, it's not going to be the same for every class or for every student, yes? Gardner tells us this already. And experiment. Think of your shaping process as a playful activity, as so many people today have already talked about. And I think, if so, our students will be understandably, perhaps, more engaged. If we as educators hope to have any chance of recapturing the attention of our students, then we can no longer limit our role in the classroom to one of information provider. Yes? Instead, we as educators must reimagine ourselves as creative artists. Teaching is indeed an art, and we are the artful composers of our students' imaginations. Our students will continue to be lured by the siren song of technology. Yes? And technology is both a blessing and a curse, because if just used haphazardly, it will do more damage than good. The internet is a good example, right? It can pass on information or misinformation. It can't provide relevance or context. There's no filter, yes? That is us. We are the filter as educators. We help to provide that relevance for the students. We can only hope to combat this crisis of apathy with a renewed commitment to the artful shaping of our students' minds. If we do this, we can reclaim our place atop the learning curve. And as educators, it is our responsibility to do so for the benefits of our students and for the future of our profession. Thank you.
I think I have just heard the most articulate way of expressing why the arts are so vital to education. We hear about in the news how arts is so useful to society and how we shouldn't be cutting arts, but you're making a linkage showing a very tangible and pragmatic way how we can learn from the domain of art and draw it into education, another domain, and use your techniques to help us understand how to cultivate a very engaging user experience for our customers, in this case, the students.
Yes.
And so once again, you've given us very pragmatic ways of enhancing our ability to reach audience, whether it's students or real customers, by drawing from art. Let me ask you.
Yes.
The closest I am to being musical is know how to turn the on button of a CD. But I want to be able to practice what you are saying.
Certainly.
How much of an artist in music do I need to be able to apply what you've just said?
Not at all, I think. You know, I think as we just heard a moment ago, we all have the possibility of being creative, yes? We all have creative tendencies. It's about making what you're doing a personal experience, right? I think if we go back on cookie-cutter forms or methods, then we're missing the point, right? The entire thing about engaging our students is making us more compelling than their technology, right? Making us more relevant than whatever it is that's distracting them. In order to do that, we need to, I think, enhance ourselves, right? Make our personality and our artfulness a part of our curriculum.
You said that the forms will depend upon the context of the students, depend on their culture, their personality, whatever. But are there some Jungian archetypal shapes that seem to work well, say, within a Western mind compared to the Eastern mind or the Middle Eastern mind? Are there such archetypes that you are aware of?
10 years ago, I would have said maybe yes, but I mean, with the globalization of our society, I mean, we're becoming one global society. And as we move along that trajectory, you know, as we continue to approach that point, I think the boundaries will continue to be flattened, right? You won't see distinct differences between cultures.
I think in some ways that makes me kind of sad.
Yeah, I think so.
We're kind of like a mick culture.
Yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
It's all homogenized.
Right, and that's not what I want to see. I want to see the creative individuality of our nation's fantastic educators. I want that to be what draws a student to a classroom and makes them want to come. And of course, there are so many factors we can't control. You know, parenting, students' financial and class situation, yes. These are things beyond our control, but if we can make as compelling a case as possible as educators, then that's the most I can do as an individual.
One last question for you.
Sure.
Do you apply the shaping of experience to your own life and deliberately, intentionally create a shape for your own life?
Oh, that's a very personal question.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Well,
want to know.
Hello, yes. I think I'm one of those type A personalities that likes to make things line up discrete little bits, yes? And I never imagined in my wildest dreams that I would be teaching in Texas. You know, I come from New England, I grew up in New York, but I decided to, whatever that shape for my life was, I let it change. You know, I let it move with time and experience.
Serendipity.
Yes, absolutely, and it's been a great way. So to some point, intention is necessary in having a goal-directed focus, but at other times you need to allow yourself to be moved.
Serendipity. Allow yourself, set a course with earnestness, but also allow yourself to explore any tangents.
To be open to the creativity of other spaces.
Wonderful.
So, as Ritika said.
So there's hope for me, even though I can't, I have no music talent.
Thank you, Peter.
I think my shape's going to be a square, though. Thank you, Dominick.